You have before you, as presented on June 9th work session, a resolution partially abandoning, and transferring $2 million in funds from various general fund accounts and projects in the Capital Improvement Fund projects to the Information Technology Operating Department for remediation. I want to just make clear, and I am here to answer any questions that you may have, but just wanted to clarify that we're using those terms of abandoning, partially abandoning, because those are the terms within city code with respect to projects and what we need to do to move the funds for those projects. But particularly with respect to the Woodman or the Academy Road project or Academy Boulevard project, we are quote unquote partially abandoning it this year. We're partially abandoning that funding that was provided in the 2014 budget. The project is on a project schedule that we would likely not get to all of the paving this year anyway. So we're just going to partially abandon the funding that was allocated this year. It will be a priority for the 2015 CIP budget. So we plan to fund the rest of that project in 2015. So it's just really it's a timing issue. So we are not we are going to complete the project. It just will be completed potentially on a little bit more delayed schedule, but possibly not even much more delayed than we even could have achieved. So just wanted to make that clear. It is still a priority, the Academy Boulevard Road repaving project. And with that, if you have any questions.
Questions, we'll start with Councilmember Snyder. Are you on? Okay, great. Okay, Councilmember Pico, we'll start there. All right.
Yeah, I understand the need to work the IT side of this there, but I've got a lot of concern about taking money out of the roads side of things, whether we're, scheduling and so forth. So I'm having a lot of heartburn with that particular part of that. Now, one of the reasons that I asked for the other item to move forward is that perhaps we could, reprioritize some of that money, although I somehow neglected the other part, which would release some election funds. But I really think we need to not take money back out of the roads, since we just did a emergency appropriation for roads. I think that really needs to stay at the top of the list.
Well, I would reiterate that I think we're still going to get the project done in pretty much the time frame we anticipated. We're just going to be using 2015 dollars instead of 2014 dollars. This IT remediation project is a high priority. We've worked hard during this year to identify the cost of the remediation that's needed, and we're just committed. It's very important. I know IT is not very interesting possibly to the citizens, but having a reliable, efficient network is critical to the operations of the city, across the city, from public safety to traffic operations, just across the organization. It is a critical need. It's something we need to do now. And so we just think it's really important, and we don't think we're impacting the scheduling of that project significantly.
Councilmember Pico.
Yeah, I don't disagree with the issue in the IT and the need to do that and the priority and so forth. What I don't agree with is taking out of roads at this time, and that's kind of the issue that I have.
Okay, Councilmember Miller.
Well, first thing I'd like to do is commend the executive branch for complying with the 2014 budget ordinance and recognizing the departments that are stated in law, because it specifically names several of the 12 departments that are part of Ordinance 1377, so I appreciate that. Acknowledgement of a municipal court department and a separate public works department, not being Parks, Public Works, and Planning. So that, I think, is, despite what was said publicly, it looks like the acknowledgement of the law has been made, so I appreciate that. However, that said, each of the projects that are being contemplated for abandonment have previously been brought forward as high priority. Judge Hayden Kane came here during the budget season saying the critical nature of the GIS system that was outdated over the next 4 years, and this is an installment to try to pay for it over the next 4 years, so we don't do it this year. It's got to be done. We can barely maintain the old system, and I don't know, without 9 members of the IT department that are gone, or 10, he could barely keep it going because he had to have a person there full-time, kind of making adjustments to the system just to administer justice to our citizens. And I think that's a pretty critical thing to be abandoning. We owe the citizens who traverse Academy Boulevard an explanation as to why the paving of it is not as high a priority as IT infrastructure. And really, we have this round figure, it's $2 million. And you know, it seems like an awful round figure. We don't know exactly what's going to be done. We don't have any outside look at, or even a comprehensive look from within, what are the things that we need. It's just a $2 million figure. We don't know exactly what that's going to pay for. And frankly, the public hasn't been given any information why this is a critical project that we're pulling funding from other things that we've been told previously were critical. I would support council direction to have the city auditor fully vet the needs and the shortcomings in IT with specific findings and where the funding should be and required and what funding would be required for remedying those shortcomings. However, as written, I do not support this resolution.
Okay, Councilmember Gabler.
I guess two things. I completely agree with Councilmember Miller on this as far as I do sense an urgency for the things that are currently budgeted for South Academy especially, and I haven't really gotten the sense of urgency for what the IT issues are. If they are there, they have not been clearly demonstrated to council. And so if there's more information there, I would love to hear it. The second part is I've learned that the young lady who spoke to us last time, Roberta Anderson, has submitted her resignation, and so there is a complete, it appears to council anyway, that there's a complete lack of leadership over there in IT. So I struggle to wonder how they can even use that funding to the best possible outcome at this point. And so I'm really struggling with this right now, Cara.
Well, let me address a few concerns, if I may. First, with respect to Councilmember Miller's, again, we are using this term abandoned because that's the term in code. With the court management system, also with IT, conflicting, having to address these more immediate needs and the process that they have been going through, and they've been working with a consultant to draft an RFP for a new court management system. It's not anticipated that they're going to be able to get through and get those specs to have a really solid, good RFP ready and us to make a decision and purchase a solution during this year. So we aren't likely going to spend the $450,000 this year on a first installment payment of a justice information system during 2014 anyway, because of timing of getting the work done. So again, we're not abandoning. We still want to look at the proposals. Once we put out the RFP and get the proposals back for a new JIS system and get that system in place. But procuring for IT is challenging. We've had some challenges with procuring for IT solutions in the past, and we want to make sure that we do a really good job with the procurement for the new JIS system. So again, we're just abandoning the funding we've set aside for 2014. The hopes were we would be able to get this up and running and going during 2014. It's looking not likely. So again, we are still committed to the project. It's just a timing. With respect to the details, I mean, I guess, and I'm not an IT person, so I apologize, but in short,
Is there somebody that is from IT?
There's nobody
I don't
left.
have anyone here today. But in short, we need to rebuild our network. I mean, I think that's the main message. The network was built when we built the data center, I believe in 2008. We have uncovered some concerns with respect to the network, and there are a lot of elements of the network that are at end of life. So we need to rebuild the network, and the sooner we can get going on rebuilding that network, which has hardware costs, software costs, skill set costs, that's what the $2 million is for.
So who exactly
Councilmember Gabler.
will manage this whole RFP process and know even what's going on in the IT department? Who's doing that
So
now?
I'm just having, Rich Valentine is the interim CIO, and he is meeting weekly with Steve Cox and myself and other leadership of the IT department. The previous CIO did bring in a number of high, middle managers or high managers. So we're meeting with 3 of those managers. Rich was one, but he is now the interim CIO. And 2 other managers we're meeting weekly. Steve's also meeting with them in between those weekly meetings, so we're monitoring it very closely. They're putting together a project plan, or they have a project plan which they put together and costed out that project plan for 2014. And so I guess I can just state they've done their best to try to estimate what the cost would be this year to get going and get as far as we can on the rebuilding of the network.
Okay, Councilmember Knight.
So I too want to echo what Councilmember Miller said and I appreciate this. Back in October, our whole discussion was for transparency. And what you provided us in Exhibit A is very, very, very transparent. And I really appreciate that. Going through them, I've also appreciated, as we work together now for over a year on the budgets, the way you operate and how you can go in and look and find out where people aren't obligating at the right rate, and therefore there is surplus. You will have that. I experienced many, many years of that myself when I was in the Air Force as a program element monitor. You had a certain spend rate. And if you didn't make it, the people with the green eye shades like yourself would come in and take the money as early as mid-year. And I think you've done an excellent job because, roads, I know how much the mayor is concerned about roads. I know how much all my constituents are about roads. But, what I heard you say, and I just want to, verify and echo it, because the roads is a CIP, or it says under general costs, but it really would have gone to a CIP, which would have been then multi-year money. So if we would have taken this $900,000 and put it into that CIP program this year, we wouldn't have obligated until 2015.
Right.
So you're not kicking the can down the road with respect to the work schedule. You're just kicking it down on the funding, whether it's $14 or $15. But like maybe a month slip is what I heard you say. So that is trades that I've seen financial people make over and over in my 20-some plus years of doing government budgets. They abandoned the court management system. I share Councilmember Miller's concern about what the judge told us. I mean, you need a special Java programmer to keep it up. But I think we have options there too. Councilmember Pico said it, moved up the one question and really wanted to move up both, that there's $250K that might be available, so we don't have to really rob everything from the judge. But that's within, and we can make that switch from general cost to municipal court once we know past the time that any citizens ordinance won't be on there. I want to keep that money, but we as council have other options too. When we discussed this money back during the budget committee last October, President King brought up doing an ordinance of increasing the fee associated with each fine and making this self-sustaining. And so if we don't have the money to do it with inside the general fund, then maybe we ought to dust off that ordinance and idea. And it was kind of a good idea that just, kind of fell through the crack. But there's our ways that we can bring that up too and make that pretty quick. But like you said, where they're standing on their RFP process, they're already halfway through. And if they're not spending, then at least 225 of that would be available. So as head of the budget committee and somebody that's been doing government budgets for over 25 years. I understand all the rationale of this. I appreciate all the transparency, and I will be supporting this.
Councilmember Miller.
Karen, I know you're just the messenger, but if there's a project plan that they've put together, why can't they bring that to council and make it a public project plan? You know, just to say we've had a lot of problems with IT and our architecture and there's something lacking in it, how does this, we don't even have a full staff anymore. So we're going to go on, you know, what's left of now 11 people that have left the IT department, go with the remaining ones and their recommendations on what's needed, and just throw away high priority projects, not throw them away, but certainly not do them when they were budgeted to do. So if there's a project plan, I think it would be appropriate for us to see it. Otherwise, I think it would be appropriate to address this in the 2015 budget. As far as the court system, the 2014 budget book had $40,000 on top of the $450,000 for the JIS to pay for a consultant to administer and write the RFP. So that's already accounted for, the RFP process. So we were already getting somebody outside to do that process. So I'm not sure how that relates to the IT question, since we had an outside person doing that anyway.
Well, they also need to coordinate with our IT department because there are certain needs of our network, and of course, that may be changing as we develop a new network. I mean, the consultant has to work with our IT department.
But who's left in the IT department? I mean, do we have, you know, we were planning on outsourcing. Do we have outsourced staff that have come in?
We have some
To
contract
replace-
staff. We are recruiting positions, but we do have a complement of both FTE staff and contract staff. I would just state that I think that the project plan and the details behind the actual work that's going to be done and how that work gets done is an executive branch function. I think we could probably share something with you, but I mean, how the work gets done and how we organize the work, I think is an executive branch function. The appropriation of the funds for the project is a city council function. We are working weekly on building that project plan, but it's, you know.
Go ahead.
Well, okay, I understand. I don't want to know how it's being done or try to insert myself into the process, but I would certainly like to know what the component costs are, instead of just a blanket $2 million for some IT architecture. I mean, I think it's in our purview to know what is being budgeted. To just say this is for IT architecture, I think in a round $2 million figure is, for me, it's not fulfilling our fiduciary responsibilities to know what we're spending money on.
And I might offer that I can get back with the IT department and have them share with you all of the expenditure lines that they propose for their balance of their 2014 budget, which then amounts to $2 million more than what they have currently appropriated. And it's not as simple as just, say, one project. It's how do we shift around resources? I mean, it's a complex thing to try to figure out how are we going to shift some of our existing resources to meet some of these remediation needs. So they've been working very hard, and it's not, you can't just identify, you know, this exact one cost, but they could share that with you.
Councilmember Knight.
You know, just as a side thought, if we get rid of this Granicus software, we'd save $80,000 in renewal and $2 million in paper.
Could you explain the difference between the 5241 account, the consulting services of, I think, $1 million going to that, and then the 53020 computer networks, and what is envisioned with those two different accounts? It looks like $1 million is going to each one of those, and so would you explain that to us?
So
how that
yes,
works?
I mean, I guess, thank you, Council President King. There is some indication here that I think based upon our discussions with the IT department of which lines they would probably need these funds transferred to, and they've identified $1 million of consulting services to help us with this rebuild, and essentially $1 million of actual hardware or software type costs. So about $1 million of hard costs and $1 million of costs to get the work done with the right skill set.
So is the hard cost, the networks, is that being put into hardware and different types of hardware, and the consulting is for the software to run the hardware? How is this?
Yes, although I might say that the goal is to the extent it's practical and economic, we are going to try to move as much as we can to probably a cloud-based solution, a secure cloud-based solution. So some of the consulting services line item may be for that type of solution.
Okay, Councilmember Pico.
I'm sorry, you said a secure what solution?
Cloud,
Oh, cloud-based.
sorry.
Yeah, just one concern on that. I've already talked my concern about where you're pulling the money from, but in trying to remediate the issues in the IT here, this is the first I've heard a few minutes ago was that your security consultant was no longer there, or security staff member was no longer there. Yeah, I've been involved in an awful lot of IT projects in DOD that operate under some pretty significant constraints. And I understand what all of the issues that you're talking about, the IT architecture, design, servers, so forth. I'm just kind of concerned where we're getting the money from. And the other part of that is I think we're missing the boat on not getting some of our other companies that are local that have a whole lot of experience in this. This is an executive department decision, not ours. And I don't want to inject myself into that, but just want to express that concern. I think we have a lot of talent here in the community to do this, and I'm not sure we're leveraging that.
Okay, so I think there's a lot of concerns with council on this particular issue, so I think we can have a vote on this, we can postpone this, we can have a discussion about how we want to get more information on this. So let's kind of have a little discussion here at council on where we're at. We have a motion, so
Let's vote.
are we going to vote? Is that, okay, we have a motion on it, so, okay. This is a resolution, so it's a one vote, so. All right, let's vote. That fails on a 2-7 vote, so has been defeated. Okay. Councilmember Collins.
I would recommend, I did computer security for years, that we come back with a better plan. I too was surprised by the resignation that occurred that I found out about today. And I think she had a very, very good background in computer security. And so I could vote for it if there was more of a plan and future plan, because computers, man, you have to update them like all the time, every 5 years at least.
Okay. I think we've, Councilmember Miller.
I too did not know about her resignation, but she seemed to be the one that was pushing this whole issue. She's, seemed to be very knowledgeable about it, and the fact that she resigned gives me grave concern about what's going on over there.